Alright, now we're going to go over installing your first plugin in WordPress. If you've been following along in our tutorials, we did a theme in the previous one and some editing of post, and now we're going to go over what a plugin is. So a plugin is pretty much just like an extension that allows you to do more functionality, and you just kind of add it. It's kind of like an app for WordPress. So if you want like a contact form or you want to embed some kind of special widget, you look for that in a plugin. In this case, there's a couple that come with it. Um, you don't want to leave plugins in there that you're not using. So if you're not using a plugin, you definitely want to delete and deactivate it, because if you don't update it or the author isn't updating it and there's a vulnerability, it will be used to hack your site. So don't put too many plugins in if you don't need them. Just something to keep in mind. It's great to have plugins, but you don't want to go overboard because it will slow down your site, especially if you have some that do the same thing, that are trying to do the same thing at the same time. So in this case, one of the first ones that I'd recommend for anyone to install would be the Sucuri plugin. It's an awesome plugin for security reasons. Highly recommend it. You can find it spelled like that, Sucuri, excuse me. Once you get that installed, then you can activate it. This is great for securing your website. There's a whole lot of other plugins. This one's just free. It's very handy to have. And then you'll see there's a little security thing down here. And then you can generate your API key for the security thing, and then it'll just let you know that that happened. And what this does is it will kind of help lock down your site and also alert you to login attempts or brute force attempts. And then there's little things where it can scan, and then they have a couple of little free things that help you. Actually, that's not free. The firewall protection isn't free, but the other things here will help prevent common attack vectors against your WordPress. Because WordPress is so popular, it's always being attacked, so you want to make sure you're at least not an easy target. In this case, this is just complaining that I didn't change the admin account from the username admin, so people can try to brute force that, because I didn't, because it's just an example site, so I'm not concerned about that. So these are just things that it blocks. You can kind of just do whatever it suggested. And then there's little things where you can set up your email address for alerts. And if you only want to log in from a specific IP address, say your home IP address, if you know what that is, or if you always use the same VPN, you can whitelist those IP addresses in this system, and only those would be allowed to log in. So you can do a lot of limiting with that. They also have little things here where it'll, how many times does it take for someone to fail before, bans. And then there's also alerts for new plugins. Like if you want to be alerted if a plugin was installed, if you have multiple people sharing that WordPress, a lot of features there. And there's also these little things where it compares your WordPress install to the current one on WordPress's GitHub repository to see if there's any, injected scripts and stuff like that. So if you are doing a lot of stuff on your WordPress and you're worried about security and you want to pay a little extra money, they do have a web application firewall, which pretty much intercepts all of your traffic coming to your site and filters out the nasty or the bad attacks before it hits your site. So it's kind of just like a proxy between your website, wherever it's hosted, and through their server. So that's an optional feature you can do if you ever needed that. It's kind of similar to Cloudflare. I personally think Sucuri is better, but they kind of do the same thing. If you ever heard about Cloudflare and their web application firewall, it's very similar. So that's Sucuri, and that's a free plugin for the majority of those features, and I highly recommend it. If you're installing WordPress and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to want to install some kind of security um, right away, because your site is going to get attacked by bots, and it's not because you're popular or not popular. It's just because there's automated scans going against any site that looks like it might be vulnerable, or has default password set and stuff like that. There's a couple other plugins that I recommend depending on what you're doing. One of them is disable comments. If you're going to be running a website and you're not trying to get people to comment on your site or link back to it in that way, you can disable the anti-spam thing and install a plugin that's called Disable Comments, and it does exactly what it sounds like. Because the last thing you want to do is have your website spammed with comments on posts when you don't really want to interact or reply back, or sit there and moderate and remove all of them. So you can install a plugin for that. It's a great example of the functionality that WordPress has, where you can pretty much install a plugin for everything. So anything that you want to do is probably a plugin for it. So in this case, this plugin would disable people from commenting on my post. A lot of times people are just commenting spam, and it's really annoying to deal with, and then it fills up your database with all these things that you need to go approve in your comments thing. Like, this is just one that's there by default. So in this, some people's sites, if you don't have something like this set up or better filtering, you're gonna have thousands of comments here to review and delete through it. It's not great. There's also a plugin to remove those if you are in that situation. That's just an example of plugins. If you decide you don't like a plugin, you can always go back to the plugins area, look at the overview, and then you can deactivate the plugin. So if I don't want this disable comments anymore, it's not relevant, not doing what I want it to do, you deactivate it, and then you click delete, and the plugin's gone. So you can do that with pretty much any plugin that you want to do, and that's the functionality of a plugin. And that's it for today.